This is Northwest Newsweek. A First Nation near White River is taking action to protect its local fishery. Officials with NEWSWEEK, formerly known as Pebble Beach First Nation, have established a checkpoint off Highway 17. The chief says the Ministry of Natural Resources has not acted to prevent commercial-scale fishing on White Lake. Lee Noonan has the story.
Lands and Resources workers with NEWSWEEK will be out on White Lake and manning a checkpoint just off the highway for the duration of the walleye spawning season. Their goal is to prevent netting and commercial-scale fishing in their territory.
We are people of White Lake, NEWSWEEK. Fish is our food source here, and it's important for our future generation too. So we fish in a sustainable way, and when we fish in a sustainable way, it allows us to think 7 generations ahead for our youth, the young people, the future generations, that they have fish available as well.
Chief Louis Kwissawa says they are taking the matter into their own hands after years of calling on the Ministry of Natural Resources to, quote, do their jobs and prevent unethical and unsustainable fishing practices on White Lake. Kwissawa says Ontario and the MNRF have failed the First Nation.
We've had no response from them. They're not here. They haven't been here. So we're just going to take our role as stewards of the land and to do what we're supposed to be doing. And we're doing that here right now.
Kwissawa says there's a particular concern with the MNRF overlooking non-members who assert Aboriginal fishing rights in NEWSWEEK territory. A spokesperson for the ministry says they're encouraging a dialogue-based solution and that conservation officers routinely patrol White Lake and will investigate matters on a case-by-case basis. Kwissawa says protecting the lake is a matter of sovereignty.
Over the years, we've been asserting our jurisdiction, and a part of asserting our jurisdiction is looking after our lakes and looking after the fish and looking after all the wildlife around here, and that's who we are, and we'll continue to assert our jurisdiction to protect our fish and waters.
The White Lake checkpoint has received support from Marathon Mayor Rick Dumas and Bigtigun Nishnabeg Chief Duncan Michano. It will be manned 24/7 until the end of the walleye spawn, which is expected to last until mid to late May. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Parks Canada broke ground in Nipigon last week on a $37 million project. The new administration and visitor center for the Lake Superior National Marine Conservation Area is being built at the Nipigon Marina and will give Parks Canada a permanent base there. Jessica Clement has the details.
Major progress is being made in Nipigon for the Lake Superior National Marine Conservation Area. The federal government awarded a $37 million contract to construct an administration and visitor center back in January, and Parks Canada, along with Thunder Bay Superior North MP Patty Haidu and Nipigon Mayor Suzanne Kuko, broke ground on Saturday to celebrate the start of construction. The facility will be located on the Nipigon Marina and, once completed, will serve as Parks Canada's primary operations base and visitor reception for the conservation area. Parks Canada representative Garth Grunerud says the NMCA was announced over 10 years ago and employees have been working out temporary accommodations.
This will provide a permanent home for Parks Canada in the region of the Lake Superior National Marine Conservation Area, which is basically from on land, Nipigon to Terrace Bay. And that will allow approximately 30 employees in the summer operating months and about 12 in the winter operating months to do all of their work from a new state-of-the-art facility.
During her speech, Haidu, who is also the minister responsible for FedNor, mentioned the dedication her predecessor, former Green Party MP Bruce Heyer, put into making the project happen. She says protecting the Great Lakes is something everyone should agree on.
The lake has had a very challenging history with industry for generations discharging into the lake. There are still many areas of the lake that are polluted or at risk of being polluted, and so conservation areas like this play a really important role in not just protecting the lake, but educating people about the importance of protecting that lake. And that should be a nonpartisan issue. I think we all want to see our natural environment continue to be healthy, continue to be beautiful, and continue to be there for the next generations.
Kuko says she's excited for the opportunities the facility will bring to the townships along the Lake Superior and MCA.
It's extremely beneficial for not only Nipigon, but for the entire region. So, you know, our industries have gone down, obviously, in the past 15 to 20 years. The forestry industry, you know, our mill burning down, the Red Rock Mill closing, Terrace Bay Mill closing. You know, we really have to diversify our economies, and tourism is a big part of that.
The new center should take roughly 2 years to complete, and if all goes according to plan, can be expected to open early 2026. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
A First Nation in the Rainy River District is receiving nearly $22 million in compensation for flood damages that date back more than a century. The claim was first filed by Nikawinin First Nation in 1996. Minister Greg Rickford was at the signing ceremony on Thursday to confirm the province's $10 million share of the settlement. Ottawa's share is nearly $12 million. The agreement recognizes that Canada and Ontario were responsible for the construction of the Fort Frances International Falls Dam in 1905, which flooded the reserve lands and continues to impact the community. Chief Wayne Smith says they'll use the money to invest in their youth, elders, and band members to make lives better for the people of their First Nation. A lengthy standoff in Kenora has come to an end. OPP say it started at 8 o'clock Monday night following reports about a barricaded person at a residence north of the city. A section of Highway 658 was shut down for around 20 hours while OPP crisis negotiators dealt with the situation. One person was eventually arrested on firearms charges, and no one was hurt. The area is no longer cordoned off, but a criminal investigation remains ongoing. Nuclear waste compensation numbers are raising eyebrows in Ignace. South Bruce, a southern Ontario municipality that's also in the running as a potential host community, has negotiated a richer deal than Ignace. The community would receive more than $400 million over the life of the deal if South Bruce is selected. That's almost 2.5 times what Ignace would get. Back in March, the Township of Ignace negotiated a 175-year hosting agreement with the Nuclear Waste Management Organization that would see $170 million, adjusted for inflation, going directly to municipal coffers if the project goes ahead at the Ignace-Wabigoon site. South Bruce has now signed an agreement worth $418 million over 138 years if their site is chosen. That number has some in Ignace wondering if they've got a bad deal, but Mayor Kim Bagri says that she's satisfied with their agreement.
We have 1,200. They have 5,400 people living in their community. Our DGR is going to be outside of our town limits, like 30, 40 kilometers out. Their DGR is going to be in their community. If you actually look per capita for how many community members we have and split it that way, it's 150,000 for Ignace and 56,000 for South Bruce.
At the end of the year, if we get 4 yeses from all 4 host communities, if one site, such as Ignace, is $200 million cheaper, that's not a bad thing for Ignace.
Ponca adds the Ignace deal was negotiated based on the community's anticipated infrastructure needs. He says the difference can be explained by the size of the communities. South Bruce has roughly triple the area and triple the population, and that site would also be within municipal boundaries. Greenstone is celebrating the arrival of a fire truck. It's the first brand new fire engine purchased by the municipality in years, as part of a major investment in modernizing the fleet. The new pumper tanker was welcomed to the Geraldton station with a push-in ceremony, which harkens back to the days of horse-drawn equipment. The truck was dedicated to the late John Marino, a former councillor and longtime firefighter and fire chief. Greenstone councillor Alan Ouellette says there has been a great reception to the dedication.
Longtime fire chief, business owner. You know, you can't go into the hardware store without having a little conversation with John. John was a delight to speak with. There's not too many people that grew up in Geraldton that don't have a story or a good thing to say about John.
Ouellette says the new truck is very much needed and will help Greenstone firefighters respond to everything from structural fires in the community to incidents on the highway. It's time now for a short break. When we come back, we'll hear from how a group of First Nations are gaining more of a say in their public school system.
It's the communities that really know what's best for their kids and how well that they're going to fit the system and what's going to gear them the best for learning new things.
Four First Nations east of Thunder Bay will now have a say in the education of Indigenous students in the public school system. The Superior Greenstone District School Board has signed a groundbreaking agreement with the First Nations that'll inform the board's approach to educating Indigenous youth. Lee Noonan has more.
Across the Superior Greenstone District School Board, more than half of students are Indigenous. The school board has now signed an engagement framework agreement with four First Nations that will change how decisions are made for students like Anemki Korshane, who's from Biktigong Nishnabek but goes to high school in Marathon.
Obviously, the education system hasn't been too kind to Indigenous people throughout history, but it's definitely getting better. It's the communities that really know what's best for their kids and how well that they're going to fit the system and what's going to gear them the best for learning new things.
Superior Greenstone's Director of Education, Nicole Morden-Cormier, says the agreement gives the First Nations a say in significant decisions that impact their youth. She believes the agreement is the first of its kind in the province.
For example, one of the areas that we know we have to do more work on is on the school year calendar. We know that our school year calendar has to reflect the different traditional and cultural celebrations and recognitions of First Nation people. Another is around de-streaming.
In our community, we can do whatever we need to do to ensure that our students are going to be successful in whatever they want to do or wherever they want to go. We haven't had the opportunity to do so for our other kids who are elsewhere. So having an agreement like this, can make that happen for them. We can be involved.
Long Lake 58, Biktigong Nishnabek, Nedamazagabig Nishnabek, and Binjitawabik Zagi Nanishnabek have all signed the agreement. The First Nations make up Zone 1 of the Anishinaabeg education system, which promotes Anishinaabe culture and language and works to improve education outcomes in First Nations schools. But across the 23 AES communities, Biktigong Education Director Lisa Mishano Korshan says 80% of kids are actually in the public system, and they want to create the same opportunities for those kids.
We simply are not just people who pay invoices. We want voice in some of the decisions and some of the things that occur within those institutions. And it's important to us to take on some of that responsibility.
Michano Courchain says the agreement has caught the attention of the 19 other First Nations in the Anishinaabeg education system, and there could be more agreements like it coming soon. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Over 20 mine rescue teams across Ontario were showing their skills at the district mine rescue competitions this week. 4 teams from the Red Lake and Thunder Bay districts were competing at Norwest Arena in Stanley. Organized by Ontario Mine Rescue, the competitions involved simulated underground emergencies where teams were evaluated on firefighting skills, first aid response, and decision-making ability under stress. Impala, New Gold, Musselwhite, and Evolution Mine in Red Lake all took part for the 2 districts in this region. Curtis Atkinson is a mine rescue officer and the on-site lead for the competition. He says bragging rights are the big prize for the winners here and notes how crucial the event is for keeping miners safe.
The importance of today is just growing our mine rescue program for these mine sites in case of an emergency. So challenging some of these competition team members just gives them that comfort during an emergency that they've got that heightened level of training. And it really tests the teams to make sure that in case that ever does come, they can respond to a problem and they've been tested right to the limit.
It makes me feel more prepared for when those situations come up, and it'll take away the initial nervousness of, oh, like there's something that's wrong here and now I need to deal with it, because you've signed up and now you have to deal with it. So all in all, it's just beneficial for every mine to submit a team into this competition, and it's a learning experience.
The winner from each district will compete in the 2024 provincial competition set for June 4th to 7th at Fort William Gardens here in Thunder Bay. An Ontario First Nations group is suing the province and Ottawa for failing to provide safety. The Chiefs of Ontario launched a lawsuit against the Ontario and federal governments over disputes in policing requirements. CTV's Siobhan Morris explains.
They came to the People's House from reserves across the province, demanding change.
We are part of Ontario, but we are treated in such a very different way. It's so discriminatory.
The Chiefs of Ontario are filing suit against the provincial and federal governments because they allege their communities aren't getting equal access to justice.
First Nation laws in Ontario are not being enforced by police, and they are not being prosecuted.
The concern stems from the act governing police that took effect last month.
It's a racist piece of legislation.
Indigenous leaders allege the Community Safety and Policing Act is ambiguous on enforcement of things like First Nation tenancy laws.
You don't have the kind of protections that everyone else in Ontario would have from illegal eviction, or if you have a dangerous tenant, how to get that person out.
The chief's claims haven't been tested in court, and the government didn't engage in calls for help.
As this matter is before the court, it would be inappropriate for me to comment any further.
An answer dismissed as a lame excuse.
We're tired of having to bring everything through a lawsuit or human rights complaint. Can we not sit at a table and negotiate this?
Colleen says he needs backup for the police service he leads on Manitoulin Island.
We have drug trafficking, we have organized crime, human trafficking, and when you see the way human trafficking is tied into murder and missing Indigenous women and girls.
It's why he feels being able to enforce things like First Nations trespassing laws is vital.
To remove that person from the community when we know that they're there for criminal activity is a huge power for First Nations communities.
This group wants the Policing Act amended.
Add us in there and enforce our laws. Otherwise, you're leaving our women and children vulnerable.
Another concern raised by Ontario chiefs is a lack of funding for policing their communities, whether that work is done by the OPP or a First Nations service. At Queen's Park, Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
Time now for another short break. Coming up, we'll hear about a funding announcement for a team designed to address the need for more mental health resources. Ontario's Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions was in Thunder Bay on Friday, announcing a $2.7 million investment. The funds will be used to create a new mobile response team to address the mental health crisis and prevent unnecessary emergency department visits. Vasilios Bellos reports.
A new initiative the province says will help Superior North EMS address the serious mental health challenges facing this area.
Paramedic-led crisis response team here in Thunder Bay. I think this is a good...
Ontario's Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Michael Tobolo, made the $2.7 million announcement. That's going towards the new Superior North Specialized Treatment and Alternative Responders Team, also known as STAR. This STAR will involve paramedicine and mental health crisis workers who will provide mental health and addiction supports. The team will be experts in de-escalation, violence reduction, and can transport individuals to treatment facilities.
It was not created by bureaucrats at Queen's Park. Where it was created was right here in Thunder Bay.
The minister swore the team would be trained to address the issues through a northern lens, calling this area's mental health challenges unique.
The provincial government can fund the solution, but the solution has to come from the people that are here, because you know best what the pulse of this community is. It's my job to make sure that I provide you the resources to do that which you need to do to keep your people safe.
Currently, up to 24% of Superior North EMS calls have to do with mental health and addictions.
Many of those are low acuity in nature, meaning that they don't need emergency department care.
Chief Shane Meir says this program will support paramedics by preventing unnecessary ER visits, while also limiting police involvement.
Taking all that knowledge that paramedics have gained from being on the streets, what they've learned in school, and pairing that with a mental health professional and an Indigenous liaison to provide that appropriate care to make it a low barrier access and meet people where they need it, when they need it.
The STAR team is expected to be launched later this year.
An injured owl found in Pebble First Nation was transferred to a Thunder Bay rescue agency this week. The owl was flown in by North Star Air and handed over to Jen Salo, owner of Thunderbird Wildlife Rescue, who will help bring it back to good health. Nev Van Pelt has the details.
On average, Thunderbird Wildlife Rescue helps care for and rehabilitate around 50 birds of prey per year. Founder and owner Jen Salo received a call Monday evening about an owl that was found on the ground unable to fly and explained the process of what happens in this situation.
I walk them through the whole capturing process and then what to put it in, because, you know, like especially with a broken wing, you don't want to put it in any sort of wire cage or anything like that, right? And you want to keep it as quiet as possible so that it's not panicking and causing more damage to itself. And I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that the break is something that's going to be fixable.
The great grey owl that was being rescued is one of Ontario's largest owls. It was accompanied by one of Ontario's smallest owls, the saw-whet, which Salo was also bringing to the vet. She explained the threats the birds face and why most of the owls they rescue tend to be males.
He's got potentially 4 other owls to hunt for, not just himself. And it's hard enough just to hunt for yourself, right? So they're taking risks. They're hunting roadways because that's where it's plentiful with mice and voles, right, on the sides of the roads in the ditches. So that's where, unfortunately, a lot of these birds are getting hit.
Salo also explained what people in the community can do to help.
The first thing I always ask people if they find injured wildlife, please send pictures. Send pictures, send videos, you know, especially if it's not in Thunder Bay and it's something that's remote or going to be hours-long drive. You know, like I want to be able to see the condition of the animal, to be able to give accurate advice on what to do about it.
People can also offer their support by buying tickets to a 50-50 draw, with all proceeds going to Thunderbird Wildlife Rescue. Nev Van Pelt, TBT News.
Marathon's Pebble Beach opened its shores to visitors earlier this month with a grand opening celebration. The event included members of council, Mayor Rick Dumas, and representation from Bigtagong Nishnawbeg. The $1.35 million redesign of the beach saw improvements to make the area more accessible. The project also included paving the parking lot and building a boardwalk and a lookout point. The work was originally slated to be completed last November. Mayor Rick Dumas says despite the delays and some work that still needs to be done, he's happy with how far the project has come.
There was some critical messages sent to council about how we were delaying it. We weren't delaying it. It was a supply chain, and we're still coming out of the COVID. And I hate to blame it on post-COVID, but the reality is it's still there. And so now we're open so the community can enjoy it. So I'm really happy and pleased.
Dumas says not everyone was on board with the changes, but he's sure the upgrades will only bring good to the community. He adds that the township is in the process of applying for the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund and FedNor for additional money for a new playground and the creation of a 10 or 12 site campground, which was part of the original vision for the new Pebble Beach. And that's all for this edition of Northwest News Week. We'll be back next week with more of the top stories from across the region.